Southeast Asia is witnessing a remarkable growth and boom. And we can see that Malaysia positioned itself as a top player within Southeast Asia in the digital economy. And with Blackboard research with the topic of grasping the e-commerce opportunity in Southeast Asia has highlighted Malaysia's strategic edge, including the growth potential and what kind of, we can say, private and public partnership to advance the digital economy. And first, as we can see from the report and data itself, how can we say the expert perception of regional leadership in e-commerce? And we can see that Malaysia is quickly rising as a top player within the e-commerce, with the ranking of second, alongside with our country neighbor is Thailand, Indonesia. We can see as Singapore is a number one factor. And do the expert from this report mentioned that one of the ranking second in e-commerce alongside Indonesia and Thailand, Malaysia, due to reason of very strategic location, including strong infrastructure and the growing market. However, Singapore leads with 59 experts are citing that they have advanced infrastructure and even solid government support. Next, from this ranking Malaysia on aspect of e-commerce performance, we are seeing, are we better than Southeast Asia country, or on the same level, or worse than other Southeast Asia countries? First, the Malaysia's policy environment in terms of supporting the e-commerce sector. From this ranking, we can see that Malaysian policy environment is on the rate of citing 14 by the experts, saying that we have the same level as other Southeast Asian countries in terms of policy environment. And the second, how's the Malaysia's approach to innovation and workforce upskilling for e-commerce? Apparently, we can see that many experts are saying on the ranking of 8 that a Malaysian approach on innovation workforce is almost as the same as Southeast Asia countries. And third one, we can say Malaysia's infrastructure, logistics and supply chain network in supporting the growth of e-commerce sector. We can see from this almost the same, that 7 expert ranking that this components Malaysia is better than other Southeast Asia country, but a little bit higher ranking with 8 are citing that experts saying that Malaysia's infrastructure is almost the same as Southeast Asia countries. Next, we want to take a look at the glance how Malaysia's perceived strengths and weaknesses. We can see from here the strength that Malaysia have with high digital penetration and young tech-savvy population. Second, advanced infrastructure and logistics, with the third one, advanced infrastructure and logistics, and the fourth one, strong government support and initiative. And this is one of the strengths that Malaysia have within the e-commerce sector. As for weaknesses, we also have 4 points here, with first, logistic challenges and high fulfillment costs. Second, digital infrastructure and connectivity gaps. And third one, digital infrastructure and connectivity gaps with limited market size and economic constraint. This is how can we see Malaysia's level for now between, or we can see comparison with Southeast Asia countries. And with what that has been said, Deputy Communication Ministry Teo Ni Ching stated in October 2024 that Malaysia's courier and parcel market is expected to reach 7.1 billion ringgit, driven by infrastructure improvement. And she encouraged that the businesses, and we can say every stakeholders, capitalize on the government initiative and maybe contribute more on the digital infrastructure. While growth is promising, it's crucial to evaluate whether all of this is benefiting various sectors and industry. Are the government policy and digital infrastructure is enough to support the e-commerce industry? And for that, I welcome you, our guest. Ready with me on the set is Lee Zhen, the CEO of Ninja Van Malaysia. I want to say thank you very much for joining me. That is a little bit of reports, data from the Blackboard research to see a comparison. How is positioned Malaysia between other countries in the Southeast Asia country? But from the Ninja Van logistic perspective, maybe you can share with us, how does Malaysia's logistic infrastructure compare to that regional competitors such as Singapore and Thailand, especially in terms of efficiency and scalability?
So, okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me for this program. So just on your question is on how's the logistics sector for Singapore, Malaysia and Thailand. So if you compare with Singapore, it's actually Singapore is a very small island state. So it's like maybe about half or one-third the size of Klang Valley. So in terms of logistic connectivity, it's quite straightforward. It's like anything you can achieve in like a day or even half a day. So in terms of logistic connectivity, is something that is quite they're definitely easier to serve than Malaysia. As for Thailand, Thailand is a whole land mass, I think, with a few islands. So the road connectivity, I think, is still pretty good. So they can reach most places in a day or in about a day. So I think the challenge for Malaysia really is more of the connectivity within West Malaysia and East Malaysia. So within West Malaysia, it's very well connected. You can go from a place to place in a day. There's no issue. I think the challenge is on the East Malaysia side, where East Malaysia is about 60% of Malaysia's landmass, but only about very much lower proportion of I think only about 12% of population in East Malaysia, and the population is quite well dispersed across multiple cities, and there's a lot of very rural areas of East Malaysia. So if you are really comparing as a whole, it's a bit harder to serve parts of East Malaysia, but West Malaysia, definitely we are on par with all the other peers in the market.
All right, this is, we can see the situation within the East and West Malaysia in terms of logistic infrastructure. But we can say, in what ways does Malaysia's geographic location serve as a key advantage for expanding e-commerce logistic, particularly for regional trade?
So Malaysia, where Malaysia is situated is really right in the middle of like the trade lanes where all the shipping lines go. Like the Strait of Malacca is one of the busiest trade lanes, right? So it's very well positioned for a lot of sea freight coming from especially big manufacturing base in China, growing like in Vietnam and so on. So it's a quite a central spot for transshipment. So we have goods coming into Malaysia through Port Klang. And then we have free trade zone in Port Klang area, also at the KLIA area. From there, we have customers that actually move goods into Malaysia, and they actually fulfill their goods through Malaysia and send across Southeast Asia, because of the good connectivity of ports, very good connectivity of airports. I think we have very good connection throughout of Southeast Asia. So if you want to have very good overnight service to most Southeast Asian countries, most Southeast Asian cities, I think we are able to do that through the strong network of Malaysia's aviation sector.
And there's a lot of factors to boost this logistics sector.
Yes.
Taking a look at the policies, Malaysia's logistic policies, is it attractive or competitive enough for global player to participate?
So we do have some engagement with MIDA. I think they do have a lot of incentives to to attract more companies coming in. So recently we had an event last week with them. They were sharing about a lot of initiative of the Smart Warehouse 4.0. They have very good incentives if you want to do smart warehousing, cold chain logistics, among multiple things. So I think generally it's quite attractive. We do hear from the event I had attended last week, we do hear a lot more companies actually attracted to move to Malaysia to sell as a regional hub here and use it as a base to distribute across Southeast Asia and even to some extent Asia Pacific.
And talking about this improvement and this initiative to boost the logistics sector, I want to take or dive deeper within the logistic challenges and innovation. What are the main logistical bottlenecks within Malaysia from previously, I think, before pandemic COVID-19 and after pandemic COVID-19? What are some of the challenges that we can compare?
I would say at the start of the pandemic, the capacity of the industry is not as is lower, but with the pandemic-induced demand impact, it forces a lot of players to scale up very rapidly to adhere to the demand. So right now, I think we are at a point where the pandemic-induced demand has tapered down a bit, and people are going back to retail and so on. So in the last 1 or 2 years, there's actually overcapacity in the market in terms of in the third-party logistics space. There's an overcapacity, so now it's really most of the with overcapacity, there's like competition and so on. So with that, I believe especially for in the logistics sector, the capacity is there. The bottleneck is definitely reduced. But I think the problem still persists between West to East Malaysia.
Okay.
Because I think the expectation, I think even in research, they cite, when I read through the research paper, they also cite about logistic costs between West to East Malaysia. So the fact that if you want things as fast as you get in West Malaysia, you need to air freight things over. When you add things into the air freight component, it definitely costs more. And with air freight, depending on the schedule, during festive season and so on, a lot of people traveling, because sometimes we use passenger planes to fly goods over to East Malaysia. So in that sense, sometimes certain fluctuations will have an impact on the lead time, and that's a bit unavoidable, because if you look at the most, it's in logistics about economies of scale. So if there's scale in West Malaysia, things can be delivered very fast. But in East Malaysia, if the demand is not concentrated area where it makes sense to move the goods over there early to fulfill, so definitely it has to come from West or even from other parts of the world. So I think with the advent of technology, AI and so on, there's an opportunity where we look at what are the hot items that East Malaysians would like to buy from various areas. They can store it at forward warehouses in East Malaysia, and that can reduce the lead time a fair bit. But I think that requires partnership between different parties, from the platforms, from all the e-commerce players, maybe some government initiative to attract them to set up things. So what I understand, there are some talks there in the way, but I'm not exactly sure what are any concrete plans at the moment.
Do technology in AI can reduce the high logistic costs and improve delivery? Because we know that adapting technology in AI, we will need also costs on that. Maybe what's your take on this?
So it's really about what's the cost-benefit analysis, right? So if the AI cost is, AI make on the ticket size might cost a bit to get the technology, but if the savings pays for it, then definitely it is worthwhile for AI. And the thing is, for certain AI optimization, could be just a one-off. So for example, like a routing of your line haul networks and so on, you just have to do a periodical review, and then that helps to optimize your routes. You save on fuel, you utilize less trucks, so you also save on the environment side as well.
Penyasaran subsidi diesel di Semenanjung tidak akan memberi kesan kepada harga barangan keperluan di Sabah, Sarawak dan Labuan.
660 individu berusia bawah 21 tahun di Sarawak telah diberikan kewarganegaraan.
Sarawak kini menjalinkan kerjasama dengan Bank Dunia dalam menjayakan perdagangan karbonnya.
Sejak hari ini, aku netu tepat aku sendiri.
Early access di rumah, sewa dan stream on demand atau sila ke saluran 480.
Can you share some of the successful example of how innovative logistic solution that has been implemented within the Malaysian context?
So I think it really, you mean over the years?
Over the years, correct.
So I think if you look way back, right, first it's about tracking.
Okay.
Like now it's like a given, where most of the 3PLs have very good tracking. But what we also see is that this component is also something that is lacking on the B2B space as well. So that's something that, like for Ninja Van, we are going into this space where we help to digitalize the areas that previously were not using the technology that we have developed for the B2C. We adapt it to help with B2B businesses. And then with our network, so for example, one of the innovative thing that we did was we were to inject more B2B buses into our courier network, where they used to use transport. We have like coffee powder chains and so on. They used to use transporter that they have irregular schedules. So maybe they go once a week, then certain areas they don't cover, or they only go over time. So we were able to innovate to say that, okay, you give it to me regardless of place, you don't give me any MOQ, I can deliver to you in 2 days. So that helps. For example, one of our customer, Aichong, they were able to meet the SLA from the customers, because sometimes like the PO validity is very short. If they use the traditional method, they might miss, and they miss out on sales. So that's how we were able to sort of marriage both our B2C technology into a B2B space to help them navigate this part and improve the service levels.
Other than innovative logistic solution that has been implemented, the Black Box research also mentioned that we need to take a look on the private-public partnership to advance the digital economy, and within this context is the logistics sector. How would you assess the effectiveness of private-public partnerships in enhancing logistic infrastructure for e-commerce growth currently?
I would say right now the infrastructure for domestic logistics, I believe the infrastructure is there and is working pretty well. But I think what in the research really is talking about maybe a bit more of the innovative solutions that you see in other countries, maybe like in the western parts of the world and so on. So maybe one example could be like adoption of like Pudo pickup drop-off network for returns, for collections. So this is very big in China. It's very big in western part of the world. But I think in Malaysia, it's still something that is still in a very nascent space, which is what we are working very closely with MCMC and other courier partners to see how we can do more of that. Because if we are able to utilize more of the out-of-home network, it reduces a lot of carbon footprint, and it also gives a lot of convenience to customers with lower cost as well. We can able to be more innovative. So for example, like if you are a fashion brand that you want to sell product that you want returns, but if the return is very high, your price goes up. Then you cannot fight with certain players that ship from overseas that can produce at a very low cost. So if we are able to work together with the government to say we try to promote more of this demand in the Pudo space, we can actually innovate product that cost lower and get them to allow them to offer price at a more competitive rate, and then they can win that market.
And we are number 2 ranking by experts are saying that because of our infrastructure, strategic locations, but Singapore is number 1. What can some of the key components or critical, we can say, their strength that we can learn and adapt within the Malaysian context, especially from the advanced infrastructure and support from the government?
So on what you call advanced, what I felt is really on Singapore side, there's a bit more focus on certain higher value products.
Okay.
That they are doing. That is, if you compare scale, definitely Malaysia's scale is much higher. The cost is also lower. But in terms of being specialized, the specialized needs and high value items are the one that probably Singapore is getting more of that, because as a regional hub for maybe many companies, as like APEC HQ and so on, a lot of the higher value goods goes through there, and from there it gets transported out of Singapore. But I believe that's something I see our Prime Minister and our team has been actively chasing more of these companies. So I believe it's really more of getting them to come in and sell a base here. I believe the opinions have been changing over the past couple of years. A lot of players are actually looking into moving to Malaysia from Singapore because of the high cost. And the reason why Singapore is able to be more innovative and invest more in automation, because the cost is high. So the payback for automation is a lot lower. Versus in Malaysia, I think generally the cost of labor and workforce is still relatively lower. Okay. So the incentive to go into automation is maybe not as high. But I see that changing a fair bit. I think for us in Javan, we also invested in our automation facilities about 3 years back, because we foresee that like at a certain scale, you still need machinery, no matter what's the cost of labor. And also in the past couple of years, we see minimum wage increasing, and that's actually quite an impetus I see for businesses to say that, okay, let's rely less on manual labor. Let's look at more automation. I think that's all in line with the plan for Malaysia to be like a higher income economy, right? Going to the higher value chain.
Other than government initiatives on technological advancement, what some of the we can say ways or strategy for logistic companies in Malaysia to invest more automations and technology to streamline the operations and reduce operational costs?
You mean what's the more opportunities?
What kind of strategies that we can encourage for logistic companies to adopt more automation and technologies to boost their operational and manage cost efficiency?
So, okay, you say on top of government initiative, I think like I mentioned earlier, it's really the cost impetus will be a big one for them that they will do that. I think the other part is really on how, if they can see the impact of what digitalization can bring to the business, I think they will be more they will be inclined to innovate. It's really more of competition, right? If more players are trying to do more innovative stuff, everyone have to follow through to meet what the market expectation is. Like I mentioned earlier, like maybe years back, tracking is innovative, but now if you just think I offer tracking, people just like, yeah, everyone does it. It's the same. So it's really more of how logistic player can slowly push the envelope, and then when players lead, the rest will follow along, and then that will drive more innovation within the space.
We must put focus on the level playing field for all the players within the e-commerce, and then we can say that what are some of the technological innovation in logistics that can address challenges in the future, such as high import taxes? We can see the revolution of taxes currently with invoice and current fluctuations and courier changes in the future.
So I think that part is the part on optimizing import tax. All this is actually it's a very complicated question. Like there's a lot of like policies, everything. Also like even things like the implementation of SST versus GST also plays a part in how they structure how the tax. Because like if goods they are bringing to Malaysia, so I think with all this, it's really of the growth of like more free trade zones. Like I think the whole Singapore JB Special Economic Zone is something that could help address that part also. With a bit more free trade zone, I think with the technology AI side, you can able to automate the calculation of certain taxes and how to optimize the flow of goods and services in order to reduce the tax component and also to simplify for customers. So, I mean, I have one personal example, right? Like I ordered something online and it was more than 500, and then it was told me like, okay, it's stuck at customs. You have to contact customs to get it cleared. But then like there's no way. It's very hard to figure out. There's like no proper way and so on, right? Like you have to find a way to contact someone. So in the future, right, with all this that's being aligned, everything should be borne by the provider, everything should be seamless, and that should be the way that most customers should experience the logistics services.
And I understand that Ninja Van Malaysia has just launched the e-guide title From Malaysia to Southeast Asia, a practical guide for e-commerce small and medium-sized enterprise SMEs spending beyond borders. How can we see this very positive initiative in boosting the logistical ecosystem with this guide?
So what we see is that there's a lot of demand for goods from Malaysia, and it's across all the Southeast Asian countries. I think Malaysia being one of the top where most people will consider. I think that, of course, the biggest market is still Singapore. I think we do have a lot of Singapore customers that's ordering from here. So I think with the even of the cross-border logistics that we have, is really a good opportunity for Malaysian businesses to look at how they can expand abroad with the use of this cross-border logistics. Because now it has been simplified to the manner that you can just pass the goods to us. We can just send directly to the recipient. We can settle all the taxes, even collect the cash if required, and then we remit the money back to the Malaysian businesses. So because in the white paper we talk about different stages, different options where you can do to expand the business. But what we believe is that if you use the cross-border logistics, it's the most efficient way for you to enter a new market. because you don't have to set up a warehouse, you don't have to deal with a lot of these complex things for a start. You test the market, you go into the new market, you maybe get a marketer to help you, or you set up a small team there. Once you see the product market fit, then you can consider your next stage of growth. Because we do have presence across all Southeast Asian markets. For example, let's say if you want to enter the Philippines, we have like our fulfillment service in Philippines and delivery. So if you expand to a size that you feel like it makes sense for me to establish a bigger presence there, we can do the movement of goods cross-border to Philippines, set up a warehouse for you, and do all the back-end stuff, and vice versa for Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore as well.
What's some of the sustainability approach in terms of logistics sector that we can learn from other countries apart from ASEAN, that maybe we can learn from advanced economies because they have more resources, they have more funding to boom their logistics sector? Maybe can share some of the examples of experience from Ninja Van.
So from what we see in the market, I think there's two areas. One is on EV vehicles, in particular three-wheel vehicles. I think that's a vehicle type that is currently absent in Malaysia, because I think there's a lot of approvals required. But if you look at in China, it's everywhere. Like you see like all the three-wheel vehicles that they can put bigger size parcels inside. Wow. So those are actually very efficient. They have charging points like just right outside where their shop lot is. They can charge, they deliver very, very fast, and then it's a very efficient use of vehicle type. And the second one, as mentioned earlier, is the usage of Pudo points. So if, like in China, during 11/11, everyone will like go to a spot to like pick up their parcel and so on. So I think this is really something is in the future with the adoption of Pudo in the logistics sector. We do see that there's a lot more other things we can do along with the Pudo with the advent of more adoption of Pudo services.
And we can say that this year Malaysia is the chairman of ASEAN 2025. Probably from other neighbouring countries will do more delivery. And then what is Ninja Van preparation moving forward?
Yeah, so for us really we want to connect businesses across Southeast Asia. So we have a full suite of services that connects all the way from cross-border warehousing to delivery to consumer delivery to businesses, and we also do distribution as well. Right now we do distribution for many FMCG brands, to mom and pop stores, to even to modern trade stores as well. So for us, we see that our role here is really to help businesses to expand beyond Southeast Asia, not just on e-commerce, also on B2B, also on retail distribution as well. That's where we do a fair bit there. We are looking at bringing some brands from Malaysia into Vietnam, because that's where we also have presence in retail distribution there as well.
All right, again, I would say thank you very much for helping us understand the logistics sector. What are the challenges and the opportunities that we can take moving forward? And definitely it's not easy talking about logistics, and we hope in the future maybe Malaysia can be alongside Singapore within the e-commerce sector. And again, I say thank you very much to Lin Jiang, the CEO of Ninja Van Malaysia, and definitely all of our discussion here will be featured in AstroAwani.com and across all social media platforms.
Kementerian Dalam Negeri memberi lampu hijau supaya pengesanan dadah dilakukan terhadap pengguna web.
Tahap integriti warga polis Diraja Malaysia PDRM masih membimbangkan walaupun peringatan dan amaran diberikan berulang kali.
Anwar menegaskan bahawa negara ini tidak mengiktiraf Israel secara de jure meskipun keberadaan negara itu di peringkat antarabangsa.
Malaysia tidak akan meminda peta sempadan maritim dan tetap mempertahankan kawasan dan kedaulatan negara di Laut Cina Selatan.
Asia tumpuan utama dunia. Dengan ekonomi yang semakin rancak, pembangunan lestari dan tenaga boleh diperbaharui, apakah pula impak kecerdasan buatan AI dalam perkembangan teknologi dan masa depan pekerjaan? Kami mendalami setiap berita dan cerita. Saksikan diskusi, dialog dan laporan khas di Agenda AWANI Asia bersama koresponden khas kami setiap Sabtu 9 malam di semua platform Astro AWANI.
Hi, good day to you. Welcome to another episode of ASEAN Kita, where today we will be focusing on the topic of why Malaysia is opted for most Indonesian students to pursue higher education. With me, Farhan Nakimi, and Abdul Aiman, we will also, explore why, what are some of the reasons behind it, and it has also become an increasingly popular trend for them, and we will explore why. In this episode, but it's not just about academics, but the shared cultural similarities between Malaysia and Indonesia, be it language, lifestyle, or traditions, which plays a significant role in making Malaysian campuses feel like a second home for them.
Yes, Farhan, this seamless transition often helps students adapt quickly, fostering a supportive and inclusive environment for learning and growth. We will also dive into the big picture of how Malaysian education influences career opportunities for Indonesian students. Do these graduates see their experience in Malaysia as an advantage when they're away from home or venture into the global job market? And today we will unravel that with Faiza Omar Khalifa, who is the Secretary General of Perhimpunan Pelajar Indonesia PPI Malaysia, and also Hanum Aisyah Artatila, Head of Secretarial and Administrative Bureau for PPI Malaysia. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you're doing well today. Thank you. So maybe the first question will go to Omar. So why do you think Malaysia has become such a popular destination for Indonesian students seeking higher education? Beyond the academics, are there specific factors such as cultural ties or lifestyle that make Malaysia stands out?
Yeah, okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you so much for inviting us, PPI Malaysia, to come to Astro, especially to conduct a discussion regarding diaspora Indonesian students. Hereby I speak representing Indonesian students, also the PPI Malaysia. And I think it depends on each individuals who choose Malaysia as their destination of studying journey. But I think personally, Malaysia is one of a country, because we have geographical proximity between Indonesia and Malaysia. There's a lot of cultural similarities, lifestyle, and also affordability of the study. And I think that stuff is one of the factors that why Indonesian students are choosing Malaysia, because also Malaysia is, for me, among countries in Southeast Asia, they have a lot of universities which have great quality of education, especially in the world ranking, to be precise, in the Southeast Asia, like University Malaya, and also University Putra Malaysia, and also our universities from International Islamic University Malaysia. They have a lot of great moral value that provided for the students. I think that's one of the factors that why Indonesian students choose Malaysia for their educational journey.
Yeah, well, that's from Umar, but what about you, Hanum? Like, do you think, affordability and proximity play into, the decision making for all these Indonesian students to choose Malaysia, like in comparison to any other ASEAN countries in the region, right? So, like, why do you think Malaysia is the best choice for you?
Of course, I think the affordability in Malaysia is like one of the main factor why there's so many Indonesian students study in Malaysia, because like the living costs and also the tuition fees compared to the university in Western, it's all, of course, more cheaper, like more cheap. And then I think it's because like the same religion, same culture. I think it's make many Indonesian students more comfortable and easier to adapt in Malaysia, especially. Something like that.
I know Malaysia is home to several internationally acclaimed universities. How does this reputation influence Indonesian students? Do they view Malaysian degrees as being highly valued, both in Indonesia and globally?
I think it's because like I think for many Indonesian students like choose Malaysia, it's because like there are some universities in Malaysia that have ranked highly in global university rankings, like University Malaya and UKM. I think that's why many Indonesian students like want to have like there's value in Malaysian university, and I think it's one of the macam kebanggaan untuk for Indonesian student if like they're graduate from that university and come to Indonesia and they're gonna have like a good job from that university because like that background.
So do you think that a degree from a Malaysian institution is highly valued in Indonesia?
I think it depends with the university itself because like we in both Indonesia and Malaysia have their like the rank tops university. Like we have University of Indonesia and then
UI, right?
UI, UI, and then Malaysia have University Malaya.
Yeah.
So like I think it depends with the university, like how top the rank of the university itself.
Well, understood. Well,
Omar, when we talk about studies in university is one thing. Career prospect is also important. How do Indonesian students perceive their career opportunities after studying in Malaysia? Do they feel like education here gives them a competitive edge, or either when returning to Indonesia or seeking international opportunities?
I think as an international student, it was a great opportunity for us to get a job, especially abroad, outside Indonesia. And I think also every day the competitiveness of fresh graduate, especially for looking a job in Indonesia or in Malaysia, is quite hard for me because I just graduated this month, especially 20th of November, and until now I'm still looking for a job. And I think it's quite good for us as an international student in Malaysia to looking a job because like Hanum said, there's something like pride for Indonesian students to can study abroad around the world, not only in Malaysia, in Australia, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to seeking a job outside the country, especially in Indonesia.
Well, we know that, like I mentioned earlier, Malaysia and Indonesia share a lot of cultural similarities. But how important is this factor to you guys? I mean, like we all know, like in terms of the language, lifestyle, and also some food, from Malaysia as well. Share the same ones as in the ones in Indonesia, right? So how do you think this also play an important factor?
Of course, it's play an important factor because we as an Indonesian student, we feel like in Indonesia itself, Indonesia in Malaysia, because whenever we go, we listen Indonesian song. Whenever we go, we find Indonesian food. Like it's like totally almost exactly same like we're in Indonesia itself. So it's more like what I said before, it's easier for us as an international student to, especially Indonesian student, to adapt in Malaysia because that factor. What about Omar?
I agree with you, Hanum.
Yeah, maybe both of you could share with us, the audience, your personal experience during your first few days or weeks in Malaysia. What stood out to you the most as an Indonesian student adapting to life in Malaysia?
Actually, this I don't know, it's what kind of story, but honestly, the first time I come to Malaysia, I was like nervous because I thought Malaysian is like. I'm afraid that Malaysian people is not like Indonesian because like we have a personal beef, something like Indonesian and Malaysian sometimes like so conflict. There's a conflict with with football or something like that. There's so many conflict that between two countries. So I thought that Malaysian people are gonna hate me, like especially in my campus. But when I come to Malaysia, like. All my thought about that is totally wrong because Malaysian is so humble to me, and then whenever I ask for direction or for anything, like they're so kind to me, and especially when they know that I'm Indonesian, they're more really kind.
Yeah, we're friendlier towards
friendly because it feels like we're macam neighbor lah, something like that. So I think it's really nice experience.
And also, is it shocking when you found out that there are certain words in Bahasa Malaysia that totally, carry a totally different meaning from Bahasa Indonesia? Like we share the exact same words, but those words carry, very significant meaning.
Yeah, that's why there's some language barrier, right? Like especially in Malaysia, whenever we communication with Malaysian friends, like, huh? You cakap apa? Like what you said? Like there's some language barrier, but for some words only. But overall, we understand what they say and they understand what we say, something like that.
And for Omar?
Yeah, I think it's for me. The first day I came here in Malaysia, is actually we are pandemic batch.
Oh, okay.
So our first day is mixed feelings between excitement and also nervous, because like a lot of people homesick, because they found a culture shock maybe, some people. But for me, because since my senior high school is also boarding school, I often stay away. I often stay far from my family since I was in senior high school, so until now. So I think because of a lot of similarities, culture, food, languages, moral value, and so on and so forth between Indonesia and Malaysia, I think for me is more easily to adapt in Malaysia. And also PPI in my campus in IAUM, also PPI Malaysia are very welcoming us as Indonesian students, new Indonesian students. They really provide us a lot of information about Malaysia, about social life in Malaysia, and so on and so forth. So I think for me, the first day I came here in Malaysia is very, very mixed feelings for me.
Mixed feelings, yeah.
I wonder how much influence do family or communities have in helping students, like yourself to pursue the education in Malaysia? Do families or your community generally encourage students from Indonesia to study in Malaysia, or in your experience?
My experience also, of course, I can be here in Malaysia in IAUM. Also, my parents also contribute in encouraging me to pergilah kau kuliah merantau, kalau orang Indonesia cakap merantaulah kau ke negeri orang sini. So I think it's very crucial. The encouragement from families, friends, also the community is really crucial for me. I believe that they are my support system in Malaysia.
And what about Anu?
Actually, I get influenced by my friends that already study in Malaysia, in IAUM especially, and then they I'm seeing her Instagram, like, oh my God, it's so fun to. I think it's so fun to study in Malaysia because she always eating Indonesian food. Like, how come is that, something like that? But my family actually didn't approve why I study in Malaysia. That's why I think I need to macam bujuk lah my family, because I'm a girl in my family. I think it's so hard to get approved by them. But they approve because it's in Malaysia, because it's near, and especially in my campus, the environment is really nice. I think that's why they approve that.
Well, I think there's a lot to discuss, Amirul, but we will need to take a short break. We will come back after this.
Penyasaran subsidi diesel di Semenanjung tidak akan memberi kesan kepada harga barangan keperluan di Sabah, Sarawak dan Labuan.
660 individu berusia bawah 21 tahun di Sarawak telah diberikan kewarganegaraan.
Sarawak kini menjalinkan kerjasama dengan Bank Dunia dalam menjayakan perdagangan karbonnya.
I'm Gordon Ramsay, chef, entrepreneur.
I'm Janine Alice. We have nearly 800 stores here and around the world.
I'm looking for someone that is hungry for success.
I'm going to invest $250,000 to one of you.
It's a chance I'll never get again in my life.
I've sold my house.
Gordon, I need this in the hands of chefs.
Let's get one thing clear. I do not like losing.
I've got to frickin' beat Ramsay.
We're here to do business, but make us want to do business with you.
Hi, welcome back to ASEAN Kita with me, Amirul Aiman and Farhan Hakimi, where we are with two guests from PPI Malaysia, which are Faiza Omar Khalifa and also Hanum Aisyah Atartila, where we are discussing on why Malaysia is opted as the most for most Indonesian students to pursue their higher education. Now, I would like to ask to Hanum and Omar, how would you describe campus life in Malaysia? Are there notable differences in how students here, participate in activities or approach in academics to Indonesia? Yeah.
I think for me, some of the aspect in my campus, especially we're talking about a campus, right? Because we're in International Islamic University Malaysia. So I think there's some aspect that different, especially like in Indonesia we have like research like skripsi, if you know, but here we only have FYP, and also like some learning in everyday life in campus that I think is different with Indonesia. But overall in campus life, I think not really different with Indonesian campus. Like we really can adapt in campus because a lot like the lectures, the friends, everything is so nice to us and nice to me especially. But what the problem is in our campus is international, so there is so many students from many countries, that not only Malaysia and Indonesia, like Bangladesh, India, and Korea, and so many more. I think that's why we need to adapt with their culture, with their behavior. I think our campus is more challenging than compared to other campus that only have local student or like Indonesian students, something like that. Because we have so many people from many countries in our campus, something like that.
Yeah, I think we would also like to know, like, how does, what role does PPI play in helping, Indonesians in Malaysia? Because I was informed that there are millions of Indonesians here, right? For various purposes. So, like, what do you guys do? I mean, like, are there like some activities that you guys, do to connect Indonesians in the country?
Okay, so basically, PPI Malaysia have their three ecosystems of PPI. There are three ecosystems of PPI Malaysia. The first one is PPI Malaysia itself. The next one is PPI campus, and the last one is the Embassy of Republic of Indonesia. So basically, there are each campus in Malaysia. Currently, we have 30 to 31 PPI campus. So each university in Malaysia have their own PPI. Like IIUM, we have PPI IIUM. And University of Malaya, they have PPIUM, APU, Taylors, and so on and so forth. Starting from Semenanjung until Sabah Sarawak, they have their own PPI in their campus. That stand under the umbrella of PPI Malaysia. So basically, the PPI Malaysia itself is, I would like to say, a second home for Indonesian students. We engage together, we gather together in events. We conduct a lot of events, like cultural events, because Indonesian students in Malaysia not only learn and studying in Malaysia, but also us is cultural ambassador for our country, Indonesia. We have to act good, our attitude, the way we talk to people, and also so forth. And also PPI Malaysia is also act as a bridge between students and also the Embassy of Indonesia. We often also create innovative event, also cooperation between Indonesian students and Embassy. They really support us, and also with the PPI campus, we have a lot of thousands of students in Indonesia and Malaysia, and we are very diverse. Like in Indonesia, we have maybe 100,000 of ethnic group. So there's a lot of people came here from Sumatra, from Aceh, from Papua, Ternate, Jakarta, Bandung. So there's so many people. Like, we have to unite together under the PPI Malaysia.
I was made to understand that there's a program called Yuk Kuliah di Malaysia, initiated by PPI. So besides this program, are there other initiatives by the Indonesian government to promote studying in Malaysia? And how does these programs compare to programs encouraging students to study in, for example, countries like Australia or the States, United States?
In PPI Malaysia, we have Yuk Kuliah di Malaysia, and also we have Edu Fair. It's currently ongoing, starting from early November until maybe mid of December. So basically, the objective of the event is we want to we want to invite students in Indonesia. In Indonesia, senior high school student in Indonesia who are looking for university, we invite them to come to Malaysia. So these initiatives came from Indonesian students. It's also with the support of Embassy of Indonesia. For the current program, we Indonesian students are volunteering. Go to Indonesia we spread out the people to a lot of schools in Jakarta, in Bandung, and also in Surabaya. So we conduct a presentation to we introduce how the campus life, how the university in Malaysia, and we embrace them, the students, invite them to come to Malaysia to study in Malaysia.
Well, Hanum, we would also like to know, like, aside from what you have mentioned earlier, right? How does studying in Malaysia shape you as a person?
Shape me as a person? I think it's because the challenging as a study abroad, especially in my campus, like what I said before, because we met a lot of people that from different background, different behavior. It's like it shaped my personality itself, like how I can to meet people with people like that, and I've got so many experience when I'm studying in Malaysia. That's why I feel like more confident when if I want to go study abroad, and even I want to find a job. I think because I have like macam bekal macam something macam capital. I have capital because I already studied in Malaysia and I get so many experience here.
Okay. For Malaysian students, we have, a spot where we usually hang out, Farhan, like, we always go to mamak stalls, But what about Indonesian students? Do you have like any favorite hangout spots or cultural activities, that are enjoyed by Indonesian students that bring together the community together?
Yeah, okay. Me personally, I think a lot of students in Indonesia, not only students, but people in Indonesia is really love to hang out. We call it nongkrong. In Malaysia, lepak. So I found the differences between Indonesia and Malaysia. Indonesian people is really love of viral things, right?
Yes.
Viral things. Everything that's viral. Oh, there's a cafe virals in Damansara. Okay, let's
go. We love them as well, right? I mean, everyone loves it, right?
Like we say FOMO.
Yeah.
It's not just
me also personally is really love to hang out with my friends and also with our community, PPI Malaysia or PPI campus. We love to gather together, have a discussions, chit chat, sharing how's life, for the spots is to be precise,
not shawarma stall. Since you are studying UIA, right?
Because we're Indonesian, we really love to hang out at cafe.
Okay,
cafes. If you know, near IIM is also there's quite a lot of cafe, but if compared to Indonesia, it's quite far because Indonesia is, if you walk like 100 meters, 200 meters, there's cafe along the way.
When we talk about friendship and networking, how easy it is for Indonesian students to build friendships and networks in Malaysia, both with local and international students like Indonesian yourself?
I think it's easier for us to have a friendship with local because sometimes we just using bahasa and they understand what we say, and when they're using bahasa Melayu pun we also understand. That's why I think it's more easier because one of the challenge that for friendship is language barrier, right? Especially in our campus, there is international because there's some language barrier. There's some student from other countries that can really speak English or Melayu fluently. That's why it's so hard to communicate with them. But with local people, it's easy for us to communicate with them and get a friendship with them.
Well, I think let's pose this question to Omar and Hanum, both of you guys. What's something that you think people might be surprised, especially Malaysians, to learn about the Indonesian community in Malaysia?
For me, surprising moment. Yeah, this is for me personally. Yeah. Often I hang out with my friends. Maybe we often hang out 10 p.m. and until midnight. Yeah, we lepak at Mama lah, Mama. I found that there's a lot of kids that their parents brings to Mama at 3 a.m., 2 a.m. I think like, oh man. In Indonesia, kids at that time is already sleep. Yeah, maybe they sleep after Isha, 8 p.m. And here, I found that the kids is still playing at Ampang Park in cafes. Oh my God, this is cool, man. For me, it's one of a surprise moment for me in Malaysia. Well, Hanu.
I think with the question, I mean like I think why people might surprise with Indonesian community is like we have a lot of events that maybe they only see us as a student, but actually we really work in PPI as a professional job without fee. Stuff like that, because we are so like have a partnership with many companies, something like that, and then also we have so many events like includes so many immigrants and then so many workers in Indonesia that maybe regular people only see us as like regular organization, but not is really that serious. But actually we're really that serious.
And I was informed that you guys have your own assembly as well, right? To discuss matters related to Indonesians and also PPI itself.
Right.
Okay, that's so unique.
And also, I think that, like I said, as Indonesian students, we are not only studying here, but also the one thing that I would like to appreciate to Indonesian students in Malaysia is the sense of the solidarity, the nationalism of Indonesian students in Malaysia, the range, walaupun terpisah jarak yang jauh antara between the family and them, the sense of belongings, the sense of solidarity between Indonesian students, between each other and also with other students from around the world. Yeah, that's one thing that I would like to appreciate because that stuff is really important for us as a young generation to connect each other, because the global rivalry every day is getting more advanced. Yeah, because we often organize a lot of cultural events also, and we meet a lot of people from around the world.
We know every international student faces unique challenges, especially whether it's adapting to a new education system or managing homesickness. Do you think Malaysian universities are properly equipped to support Indonesian students in your experience yourself?
I think for me it's really support because like what I said before, in my Malaysian university, I think the learning every day in campus, I think it's really nice for us, like how we can understand what the lectures say, how they teach us, how the academic really give us really. I think like especially in my major communication, like we have so many things to do. Like we can be reporter or journalism. There are so many clubs. I think campus in Malaysia really support us.
Okay, I guess that's all that we have for ASEAN Kita today. We would like to thank Faizal Omar Khalifa, Secretary General Perhimpunan Pelajar Indonesia PPI Malaysia, and also Hanum Aisyah Atartila, Head of Secretarial and Administrative Bureau PPI Malaysia. We will discuss today on why Malaysia is opted for most Indonesian students to pursue higher education. And this is all for me, Amirul Aiman.
And I'm Farhan Hakimi. See you next time.
Merentasi Laut Cina Selatan hingga ke puncak Kinabalu, kami bawakan laporan ringkas, padat dan komprehensif. 5 minit AWANI Sabah Plus setiap Khamis dan Jumaat 8.25 malam hanya di Astro AWANI.
7 peserta berjaya ke peringkat seterusnya. Ini adalah peningkatan yang pada saya daripada sini ke sini.
kami adalah sangat penting.
Merebut posisi sebagai finalis.
Hati-hati, ini cuma berapa langkah lagi.
Apakah strategi mereka untuk memenangi hati juri? Konsert separuh akhir Gegar Vaganza di Astro Real dan Astro Go.
Welcome to the presentation of the Global Cooperation Barometer 2025. I am Samir Saran, and I'm the president of the ORF and a member of the expert advisory board for this year's barometer. Those who have joined us in person, please collect your headsets to engage with this presentation. And those who are joining us online, a very warm welcome once again. Follow us with the hashtag WEF25. The Global Cooperation Barometer is a tool developed by the World Economic Forum in collaboration with McKinsey & Company to measure the state of global cooperation. In a moment, I will turn to Bob Sternfels, Global Managing Partner of McKinsey, to share this year's finding. We will then leave about 10 minutes for Q&A, both from those who are online and those who are seated here. But before I do that, let me just make one point on why this is a very important project. We know geopolitics is complicated, and it is becoming even more so. We know there are increasing levels of conflict and competition in the years gone by, and we also know we are faced with a plethora of crises: a warming planet, an economy that is struggling. We know peace and security is in shambles, and of course, we still have lots of black swans and grey swans to respond to. The barometer does not compel us to agree on everything. It tells us, or at least motivates us, to find ways of working together. It is measured across 5 key pillars: climate and nature, trade and capital flows, health and wellness, and peace and security, alongside innovation and technology. In a sense, what the barometer does is to tell us where we are and where we should be headed. Now, I'm going to be excited to learn more about this particular, the inaugural edition of this report, and I am going to turn the floor to Bob, who will walk us through the data. Bob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Samir. And thank you.
Please. Thank you.
And thanks for kicking us off here. Hi, everybody. It's my privilege on behalf of McKinsey & Company to celebrate the second time that we've done this with the World Economic Forum. And when we set out on this idea of starting to measure global cooperation, we realized that there was no common definition to this. And before we start figuring out ways that we could cooperate or collaborate better, you need some baseline, right? You need a baseline. And so we set out to develop the Cooperation Barometer. If you delve into it, and I'll explain it more in a moment, it has 41 indicators across 5 categories. We went back 10 years to start to get a trend line to this. And this is the second year in which we've done this. As Samir indicated, I think the reason this is so important and why we're committed to continuing to do this is it allows us to keep score. Are things getting better or are they getting worse? We need some reference point as we figure out what we want to do. You have to be able to measure against this. And the barometer's humble goal is just to provide a measurement tool around this. From the measurements, does it start to give us insight as to where cooperation might be warranted? It may also give us insights as to where future concerns may lie, because some of the indicators are forward-looking. And how do we think about degradation in forward-looking indicators? Now, it comes against a backdrop where cooperation is needed now more than ever. You look at some of the existential questions that we're facing, the rapid adoption of technology and both the opportunities and disruption that may entail, complicated geopolitics, how we continue to navigate climate transition, but also fulfilling the energy needs of the global south and doing both. Demographic change that is more than any time since census was recorded in the 16th century. So there's a real need for this. So maybe without further ado, what I'll do is I'll spend a little bit of time unpacking the findings, and then we'll open up to discussion. And so if I start with the first slide, which really just lays out the pillars. So as we start to break down cooperation, how have we defined it? And as Samir mentioned, there are 5 pillars that we'd like to go into. Trade and capital flows, innovation and technology, climate and natural capital, health and wellness, and peace and security. And from here, we'll get more granular, but we need to start parsing this broad notion of cooperation into some types of categories. We're refining these as we go, but there's 41 indicators under these 5 categories. And so what do we find? And I'll start at the top level. If you look at the aggregate trend in cooperation, what you find since we started recording this in 2012 is there was a rise in cooperation that in aggregate essentially flatlined since 2020, right? So not up, not down, flatlined in terms of cooperation. Now, there may be some good news in that because I think most people think cooperation is declining, right? And I'm going to point to some reasons why it's stayed where it is. But I'm also going to point to how this chart is very misleading because the average misses the granularity of trends underneath it, right? And so at the high level, the optimist can say, hey, right, we're still cooperating as we always have. I think a more concerning view starts to get into the detail, right? So let me then now look at the 5 pillars that we looked at, and what you see is a trend in these pillars that starts to diverge. So the good news, 4 of the 5 pillars are basically where they were pre-pandemic. And I'll talk to those in a second, with the real degradation being in peace and security, right? So at the next headline level, and I'm kind of peeling the onion on this, you'd say, hey, 4 of the 5 levers remain solid, cooperation remains high, peace and security is clearly declining, and I think we see that in the world around us when we just look at the number of conflicts that, that 2024 entailed. So that's kind of headline 1. But now let me get more granular because in each lever, you see ups and downs, right? And so I'm going to start with trade and capital, right? And so if you look at trade and capital, and I'm an optimist, so I always start with the positive sides. What you see in terms of growth is you see real growth over the last year in capital and services. Now it's offset by physical goods flow, right? So services grew, capital grew, but physical trade dropped. The largest concentration in physical trade dropping is in emerging markets, right? So we see a disruption in cooperation around physical supply chains, but a growth in services and capital. And I think we have seen some of the aspects of politicization of supply chains, right? And that's manifest in the index that we see. I might double click just also on this while we stay on this slide for a second. FDI has remained strong, and you might say, hey, that's great. People are investing cross-border, but it belies that FDI got more concentrated into a small number of developed economies. So FDI in the emerging South dropped. Right, global South dropped, and that's kind of a concern as you think about where investment might be most needed, right? And that's masked when you look just at aggregate FDI. Let me turn to innovation and technology because you also see some ups and downs when you go to the second pillar in innovation and technology. And again, I'll look at where growth has occurred. So we see IT services continue to grow. Cross-border data flows continue to grow at phenomenal rates, right? So those things give you optimism on innovation. Individuals using the internet, in some ways, the modern access to electricity has continued to go up, which provides people opportunity to be on the online world. So all those things are on the positive side on the innovation and technology front. But the worries come in some of the indicators that might be lead indicators, right? So what you start to see is stresses in knowledge sharing around innovation. Cross-border patents and cross-border R&D have dropped, right? And those are future indicators of cooperation and innovation, right? And they should be at least yellow flags in call out on this pillar. Let me take you to the third pillar, which is around climate and nature. And again, there are things to celebrate and things to call out as concern on this category. The good news is, despite a lot of the rhetoric over the last year, investment continued to flow into sustainable technologies, right? We saw a net increase in that over the course of the last year. It was, in fact, the largest acceleration in migration and adaptation financing that we've ever seen. So you'd call out that. The carbon intensity of GDP growth also went down, right? So we are seeing progress as sustainable technologies are implemented. The worry is the rate of progress is nowhere fast enough to hit any of the goals that we've articulated. And when we did an estimate around this, it's only about 10% of the total investment required to hit our net zero commitments have actually been made. So we've moved, but we've moved 10% of the way, and there's a long way to go. If I looked at cost side of this and took a natural disaster aspect, and this excludes, I'm from California, it excludes the fires in California because that's a 2025 aspect. In 2024 alone, the insurance industry had $135 billion in cost due to natural disasters. Right? And that actually is at an all-time high and likely will be exceeded in 2025 just based on California. Right? So we're also seeing that on the liability side of the climate. It's coming home to cost. It's coming home to cost. Let me go to Pillar 4, health and wellness. Again, things to celebrate, things to call out. The part to celebrate is on outcomes. Outcomes improved over the year. So if you look at child mortality, maternal mortality, and life expectancy, those all improved in 2024. They're great outcome-based metrics. But if you look at forward indicators, you start to get worried. And I'll call out two forward indicators. Cross-border R&D in life science dropped 15%. Right? So the cooperation and collaboration around investment in future health technologies is declining. Further, I would just call out the failure of the World Health Assembly to agree on pandemic protocols. So are we ready for the next pandemic to cooperate? Maybe not, right? And those are both future indicators around this. So you see puts and takes that might say, hey, I celebrate the success we had here, but I'm worried about the future cooperation of where this might head. Let me go to the last one, which I think should be the clearest. And this was the unambiguous decline pillar, which was around peace and security. And what really drove this were geopolitical tensions, proliferation of conflicts that we've seen around the world. The IRC watch list was at an all-time high, and the duration of civil conflicts was at its highest level since the Cold War. We know all those things, and they're unambiguous declines in cooperation on this front. If you do look at let's say, the efficacy of multilateral organizations around this, 2024 was not a good year for the effectiveness of multilateral organizations in addressing these things. And if I just call out the UN Security Council, they haven't mandated new peacekeeping operations since 2014. And there were no resolutions passed, or 2024 was the fewest number of resolutions passed by the UN Security Council. So the mechanisms we have to deal with this, at least the multilateral mechanisms, aren't proving effective, and we're going to need to figure out some new methods if we want to reverse this pillar. So those are 5 pillars. I will close with some thoughts from the barometer when we pulled up in collaboration with the WEF to say, well, what might be ideas to improve these trends? And there were 5 ideas that I wanted to highlight. The first is we need to innovate on how we cooperate. I'll just be blunt. Organizations don't cooperate well, right? I work with a lot of private enterprise. You're just geared for the antibodies not to cooperate up and down the value chain. Public-private often misses each other, and public-public often has tough times really figuring out real collaboration. So how do we innovate on mechanisms to collaborate better? The second is what we call planned opportunism. When you see something, can you mobilize quickly to find advances to cooperate, or do we dilly in the back and forth negotiation? How do we break that through and change the cycle time so that we can be opportune when a moment strikes to cooperate? The third is redefining proximity. And one of the things that we've done is we've looked at trade corridors around the world. And you are seeing actually the world reconnect in different ways. Some seem intuitive. So if you look at the rise of flows between the US and ASEAN, you've seen that, that rise. But you may not know that the rise between the GCC and Brazil.
Huge.
The rise between India and Central Europe, actually, around manufacturing and how it's being reset, and also IT services. Correct. So there are new patterns and new connections here that may allow us to define proximity in different ways and reconnect the world. I love this one of think big but start small. This is the idea of if we stay in the grand, we never get going. So how do we pick places just to get start and start measuring progress? And then maybe finally, I'd close with this notion of, it's a complicated word, structural segmentation. What this means is different organizational models going forward. You know, how do we think about reimagining our supply chains? How do we think about reorganizing talent when we operate in multiple countries? How do we think about new capital structures if you operate around the world to get different sources of capital for different parts of your business in different parts of the world? There's got to be some innovation on that front if we want to unlock cooperation. So that's the report in a whirlwind. Samir, I'll hand back to you, and I think we can do some Q&A.
So I'm going to come to you in a few minutes, but let me ask Bob a couple of follow-up questions.
Please.
We see flatlining since, I think, the 2020.
Yes.
We see a flatlining. That's also when the Trump term ended. In some sense, we are at a new moment. How do you see, what would your message be to global leaders today? Is there a sign of positive future that we could work towards? Or are we beginning to see the beginning of a decline of cooperation?
You know, I think it's a fundamental question of, do you believe as a leader this is an exogenous force or an endogenous variable, right? Meaning, is this being done to me or can I affect the outcome? Correct. And I think what's clear since 2020 is we've had multiple shocks, right? You know, we had a pandemic. We had the invasion of Ukraine. We've had the rethinking of the world order that you and I grew up in. What it's turning to, I can't say, but it's changing, right? So one version is left to its own devices. I think you will see cooperation decay, right? But we don't need to leave it to its own devices. Many of these aspects allow us as leaders, whether you're private, public, social, to affect change. And, you know, I see this in the world around us where the CEOs that I talk to are trying to figure out, this is their version of that story. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities. And I think one of the asks that I would have to leaders watching is, how do we lean into the opportunities as well as the challenges so that we could actually ensure that this doesn't flatline, but picks up?
You know, let me turn to a very interesting slide you presented to us. You see really strong climate finance forces that are now investing in mitigation efforts, and yet you see a rise in emissions. Is that about money going to wrong places? I mean, the bigger question, what are your advice to those who are seeking to cooperate on getting the right results? You know, that slide is really telling.
Well, and look, you know this better than anybody from the part of the world that you sit in, but when you think about this challenge, often leaders talk about a trilemma that we need to solve for. We need to solve for climate change. Equally, we need to solve for energy availability. So India consumes 1/10 of the energy of the United States.
Correct.
And denying India the growth path that it's on, 7-8%, hopefully all the way through your 100th, is not the right solution here, right? So we need affordable energy, we need clean energy, and I think also what the recent events showed us is you need secure energy, that the energy supply chains, in particular if you look at Europe, were not that resilient. They were fairly fragile. And so you have to solve all three of these at the same time. And I think what that leads you to is the thinking of and-based thinking. And this is an idea that says we do need to continue to invest. From a business perspective, we need the environment and framework that says, I'm going to be rewarded for the time frame of that investment, and that there's a policy and regulatory environment that makes those investments economic. Right? So we need that. I think on the other side of the equation, we need an environment that's conducive for all of you young, bright minds out there to want to drive innovation in the space. We see enormous potential for future innovation in climate technologies. Is that going to be rewarded? And will our young, best and brightest go into this space? But I think also there's an aspect of, in this balance of leaders between adapting to current environment and maintaining true to your convictions, how do you hold some line in the middle that says, I'm not abandoning these trilemma goals? And often that requires, I think, a shift in, let's start measuring year-by-year progress as opposed to end date aspirations. And one of the things that I like about the index is we can start getting more granular and measure this year by year.
You know, I can go on with a few more questions, fascinating slides and the report. Congratulations for the second
Thank you for
report
jumping in on this too. It's been great.
And I'm opening it up to all of you now to pose questions to Bob, those online and those here with us. I'm going to put on a ear set.
Yeah, and I'll try and listen along here so I can hear your questions. Huh?
I'll remove my glasses. It doesn't work, but I'll do that. Go ahead. Please ask your questions. Oh, there's a gentleman there.
Which channel are you on here?
Number 2.
Oh, sorry. I got to get on the right channel.
Yeah.
Are you on yet, Bob?
Are you on 2 yet?
No, it's. I don't think I have a battery.
You don't have a battery?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I can. Oh, I got one here.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. It's easier to answer the question if you can hear the question.
Well, that's not necessarily true, as we all know.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Ignorance is bliss.
Sometimes people answer the question they want anyway.
Bob, one of the things that occurs to me about the analysis you've done is you could abstract from the aggregate figures certain relationships. For example, the relationship between the United States and China. And I don't know if you've done this analysis, but if you have, I'd be very interested in knowing which relationships are driving what the average figures are and which relations are driving them in a downward direction.
Yeah. It's a great question. And the answer is no. We haven't started to get to correlations and relationships driving underlying drivers. But we do have sub-data that starts to see trends. So, for example, I had mentioned that physical trade flows had dropped. The largest drop in that was U.S.-China. Right? Does that imply a correlation? Probably, but we haven't linked it that. But we've identified the atomized driver that says, look, this is one of the biggest drops in the cooperation index. And I think the reason I'm excited about the index is it allows us to start to get to granular points to then say, how do we feel about that? And then does that start to lead to thinking of what we should do about it?
So Bob, just one quick follow-up on that same question. At some point, could some wise people be looking at the cooperation index and be thinking about impact on GDP, global GDP, and how certain decisions or certain lack of decisions or partnerships are affected?
Well, there is a strong correlation if you go back to 2012 between the aggregate improvement in the index and the growth in GDP. And that's one of the correlations that we have shown, and you've even seen since 2020, right? That change. What that foretells for the future, right, is up for others to portend and predict. But I do think one of the areas of subsequent work could be then at a more granular level, do certain pillars matter more than others, right, as we think about this? And I think that's a great input for perhaps the next iteration of the barometer.
Another question here? Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Well, analyzing the historic information will help you try and forecast, after listening to Trump's speech yesterday, if it will continue in a stable line or there will be some disruptions.
It's probably too early to tell. I think is the honest answer to this. And what I would say on the one hand is one of the places that feels a little bit more certain coming out of the new administration is a move for less regulation. Right? And you've already seen some of the pronouncements. You're going to see several of the executive orders in a deregulation environment. From the 3 pieces of legislation that were passed in the past administration around infrastructure, IRA, and CHIPS Act, there's the current estimate, there's over $100 billion of capital that was committed through those that is tied up in last mile permitting and regulation. By the way, half of that comes from companies outside the US. So if I just pick one granular thread that actually says you could see potentially a bump on one of these, it might be through speeding up the deployment of capital that's already committed around that. On the other hand, one that I think is highly uncertain are around tariffs. And obviously tariffs do not drive an increase in these. So I think there's puts and takes on this, and we're going to have to get more granular as we unpack the actions of the current administration over the next little while.
Okay, so we're going to take the last question now, and we're going to turn to you.
The question is, the general decline in the peace and security line, is it driving the problems around cross-border cooperation in technology, general flow of goods? I mean, is that the cause? In which case, unless that line shifts, these are never going to reverse. So, the levers that were outlined may or may not be relevant to actually stem the tide of those areas which were the lead indicators of, again, further future peace and security going down.
Exactly.
Thoughts?
It's interesting, I think in part, but only in part. And the reason I say that is when you look at the rise in conflict, clearly some of the slowdown in FDI in conflict-driven or conflict-near countries is understandable. So you see a drop in the trade number with a drop in the peace and security number because those are clearly linked. Others aren't as linked. When you think about cross-border patent investments, those largely so far have actually been in non-conflict geographies. Right? And so when you think about the slowdown in future investments in technology, you could make a case that says, yes, I want to fix peace and security, but I could fix this one as a standalone. Right? And what is driving a slowdown in that investment? And so I like these linkages, but I'd also try and not say everything is linked to everything because then it starts to slow down. Where can we actually atomize some of these for more targeted problem solving?
Bob, we have last 3 minutes. I noticed a very interesting bit of information that you presented. International students flow negative.
Yes.
Does that tell us the story of this? And you know what I'm talking about.
No,
it's basically Chinese students going to America. Right?
Look, we're
and is that in many ways the story of this cooperation barometer?
Look, I have the privilege of leading a global company that operates in 70 countries. We have over 150 nationalities, and global experience is one of the key things in our own DNA. You do see a slowdown in cross-border students, particularly grad students. Right? And when you actually think about the innovation potential, but maybe this is just Bob's own version pulling up from the index, the potential for better understanding each other and therefore for real collaboration, not just cooperation, I think that's one to watch and one we need to figure out.
Great. I think this brings us to the end of a wonderful session where we got a glimpse of the index. Do get a copy, do download it, do read it, do analyze it yourself, and do write about it. And Bob, thank you for doing this wonderful
Thank you.
job.
Thank you for co-hosting. This was fun.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.